I was deadheading the marigolds by my mailbox when I saw the U-Haul pull into the driveway next door. It was one of those blistering Florida mornings where even the breeze feels like it came out of a clothes dryer. I'd already been out too long, but pulling weeds and pruning my flower bed was the only thing that calmed my nerves lately. I wiped my forehead with the back of my glove, squinting past the rows of crepe myrtles that lined our cul-de-sac. My cul-de-sac. Palm Creek Village was supposed to be my final calm chapter. Retirement, bingo, water aerobics, and books I never had time to read. A place where everyone kept to themselves, and the only drama was when Gladys forgot to bring cookies to Bridge Club. But then that truck rolled in, and my breath got stuck somewhere between my throat and my stomach. The driver door creaked open. A man stepped out slowly, salt and pepper hair, brown leather sandals, and a familiar hunch in his shoulders like the world had once leaned too hard on him. He turned. And just like that, I was 21 again. Standing barefoot in a Denver apartment, holding the letter he never had the decency to read in person. The one where I told him I was pregnant. The one I burned in the kitchen sink after he left for New York without saying goodbye. Jack. I didn't mean to say it out loud. It just came tumbling out of me weak and cracked, like it had been waiting 52 years to escape. His head jerked slightly. He looked at me, eyes narrowed under thick brows. Then casually, like he didn't just walk back into my world like a ghost, he nodded. "Hi there," he said, his voice rougher but unmistakably his. "Beautiful day, huh?" I felt the pruning shears slide from my hand. They landed in the dirt near the marigolds, blade down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I clenched them behind my back so he wouldn't see. Yes. I suppose it is," I mumbled. He didn't recognize me. After all this time, all those years. He didn't know who I was. He reached into the truck cab and pulled out a white plastic jug, windshield fluid or maybe something heavier, and popped the U-Haul side door. I stood frozen on the edge of my lawn, the smell of cut grass and sunscreen hanging in the air like ghosts from another life. And then I did the stupidest thing I could have done. I walked back inside and locked the door behind me like I was afraid he'd follow. In the safety of my kitchen, I leaned against the counter, breathing through my nose like my therapist had taught me back in '93 when I was dealing with my second divorce. "No way. This can't be real," I whispered. But it was. I peeked through the blinds. He was unloading boxes now, moving slower than he used to. Time had softened him, loosened the muscles in his arms, turned the boy who had once run barefoot across campus lawns into an old man with orthopedic shoes and an iced tea tumbler. My Jack. Well, not my Jack. Not anymore. Not since Nixon was in office. A dozen questions crowded my brain. Why is he here? Is he married? Does he remember anything about what happened? And most of all, why the hell did he move in next door to me? My hands finally stopped trembling long enough to make coffee. I wasn't even a coffee drinker anymore. Switched to decaf green tea years ago. But I needed the routine. Something to cling to that made me feel like I still had control over my own story. The coffee pot hissed and burbled. I watched the brown liquid drip into the carafe and realized with sickening clarity that I didn't know how to feel. Should I be angry? Should I go outside and scream in his face? Or pretend I don't know him either, just like he did to me? I didn't get a chance to decide. 3 soft knocks on the front door pulled me away from the counter. I froze. Knock. 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 He didn't. He wouldn't. Would he? I moved slowly, every step like wading through memory. I opened the door just enough to peek out. It wasn't him. It was Pam, my next-door neighbor on the other side. Late 70s, early onset nosy, bless her heart. She was holding a lemon bundt cake and wearing those bright pink Crocs that made her look like a retired flamingo. "You see the new neighbor?" she chirped. "Says his name's Jack. Just moved here from Connecticut. Widow. Seems nice." My breath caught. "Widow." She nodded. "Lost his wife last year. Cancer, I think. You should go say hello. He mentioned he's looking to make friends. And you two are right next door." I forced a smile. My jaw felt like stone. Yeah. Small world. Too small. Too cruel. Too late. Pam handed me the cake. "For you. I made 2. Lord knows I can't eat both. Come by later if you want to talk about him." I thanked her, though I barely heard what she said. My thoughts were spinning like a broken record in a dusty jukebox. I shut the door gently behind me, walked back to the kitchen and set the bundt cake down on the counter like it might explode. My eyes drifted toward the window again. Jack was standing at the edge of his driveway now, sipping from a plastic tumbler, looking out at the street. And then, like some cruel joke scripted by the universe, he looked up and waved at me. Smiled. I didn't wave back. I closed the blinds and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. He didn't remember me. But I had spent 5 decades remembering everything about him. No. He lives next door. But he has no idea what he left behind. If you've ever had someone come back into your life when you least expected it, especially someone you tried to forget, hit that subscribe button. This story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. It had been 3 days since Jack moved in, and I'd avoided him like a high school test I hadn't studied for. I took out the trash early, walked in the evenings when I knew he wouldn't be outside, and made a point of checking the blinds like a soldier peeking out from a foxhole. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Tuesday morning started out like any other. I was standing in my garage, half cursing my automatic sprinkler system, which had gone rogue again and soaked the begonias. I didn't hear him coming until I turned around, and there he was, leaning on the open side of my garage door, holding a travel mug, like we were neighbors who casually bumped into each other at the HOA meeting. "Morning," he said. I froze. My first instinct was to reach for something, anything, to busy myself. I grabbed a dusty broom and started sweeping the same patch of cement I'd already swept twice. "Morning," I replied, not looking at him. He stepped a little closer. "Sorry to bother you. I just figured it was time I formally introduced myself. I'm Jack. Jack Tilley." Like I didn't know. I finally looked up. My stomach twisted when I saw his face up close again. The laugh lines deeper, a faint scar on his chin I didn't remember. But the eyes were still the same. Light brown. A little too curious. A little too kind for what he'd done. "I'm Nora," I said flatly. He smiled. "Nice to meet you, Nora." The lie stung like vinegar on a wound. He extended his hand. I hesitated, then shook it. His grip was warm. Like he'd never crushed me. Like he didn't walk out on me 52 years ago without a note, a phone call, or even a backward glance. "What brought you to Palm Creek?" he asked. I shrugged. "Weather. Quiet." He nodded. "Same. Too many memories back in Connecticut. After Judy passed last fall." His voice trailed off. He looked down into his mug. "I just needed a reset. You know." I didn't answer. I didn't want to think about the wife he'd built a life with. The woman he chose instead of me. There was a silence between us, but it wasn't comfortable. It was heavy. Like the pause before thunder. Then, as casually as someone might ask for sugar in their coffee, he said, "Listen. I know this is forward, but would you want to grab dinner sometime? There's this seafood place near the marina I've been meaning to try. I hear they've got the best shrimp and grits in town." I blinked. "Excuse me." He chuckled nervously. "I just meant, if you're up for some company. 2 retirees trying to figure out how to start over." I stared at him, stunned. He didn't know. He really didn't remember me. The girl he loved. The girl he left. The one he promised to marry after graduation, who watched him walk onto a plane to New York and never come back. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said quietly. His smile faltered. "Oh. Of course. No pressure." He stepped back, embarrassed. "Well, if you ever change your mind. I'm just next door." He walked off down the driveway, sipping from his mug, oblivious to the earthquake he'd just caused inside me. I stood there holding the broom like a weapon, my knuckles white. He wanted to take me to dinner. Like nothing had happened. Like we were strangers who met by chance and had a spark. But I wasn't a stranger. I was the woman he left behind. The woman who waited for letters that never came. Who found out 6 weeks later that she wasn't just heartbroken, she was pregnant. I walked back into my kitchen and slammed the broom against the tile floor. The crash echoed through the house. 52 years. And he forgot all of it. I pulled down the old photo box from the laundry room shelf. The one I hadn't opened in a decade. My hands trembled as I dug through the yellowing envelopes and cracked leather albums. There we were. July 1970. Me in a gingham sundress. Jack in cut-off jeans and a Rolling Stones t-shirt, standing in front of my beat-up Buick with his arms slung around my shoulder like it belonged there. We looked so young. So certain. So doomed. I found the letter next. The one I'd rewritten a dozen times before finally mailing it. The last thing I ever sent him before I gave up. The one I signed. Nora and the baby you didn't want. He never responded. I folded the letter back up with trembling fingers and put everything away. I should have left it alone. Should have locked that memory back in the box where it belonged. But instead I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my daughter. Mom? Her voice came through confused. Everything okay? I hesitated. Do you remember me ever mentioning Jack? Jack? She asked slowly. You mean your college boyfriend? The one who disappeared. That's the one. Why are you asking about him now? I swallowed hard. Because he just moved in next door. Dead silence. Then, you're kidding. I wish I was. Mom, are you okay? I didn't know how to answer that. I looked out the window again. He was unloading a patio chair now, humming to himself like someone with nothing on his conscience. I think I'm going to tell him, I said finally. My daughter's voice sharpened. Tell him what? The truth. Who I am. What he did. About you. Mom, wait. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, I said, voice thick. But I can't keep living next to a man who shattered me and doesn't even know my name. Another pause. Then softly, whatever you decide, I'll back you up. Just be careful. I hung up and sat at the table for a long time. The clock ticked on the wall. The bundt cake from Pam still sat there, untouched, now hard as a hockey puck. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. And I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't pretend anymore. He was going to know exactly who I was, and what he left behind. Even if it meant tearing open old wounds. Even if it meant facing the ghost of a life I never got to live. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the ceiling fan spin, each slow rotation a metronome counting the seconds of my past dragging itself into my present. The photo box sat open on my nightstand. I tried to put it away, tried to close it like it was just another keepsake from a life I had moved on from. But it stared back at me like an open wound. Pictures, letters, yellowed newspaper clippings, and one dog-eared envelope I could never bring myself to throw out. The letter I sent him in the summer of '71. The one I knew he never read. The one that started with, Jack, I wish you had the decency to say goodbye, and ended with something I couldn't say out loud even now. I got up around 5 and brewed a fresh pot of tea. No coffee this time. I needed my hands steady. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the letter again. The paper was brittle at the edges. My handwriting back then was rounder, more hopeful. I hadn't reread it in decades. I waited for you. You said you'd come back after the internship. You said we'd figure it out. But you never wrote. You never called. I didn't know how to reach you in New York. I'm not mad anymore. I'm just tired. I need you to know I'm pregnant. I don't expect anything from you. I just thought you should know. It's a girl. Her name is Claire. She deserves better than a question mark where her father's name should be. Nora. I never got a reply. Not even a returned envelope. Years later, after I married and divorced, after I raised Claire on my own, after I built a whole life from scratch, I still sometimes wondered if he ever saw it. Or if it ended up in a pile of unopened mail in some walk-up apartment in the village. And now he was here. Next door. Sipping iced tea like the last 50 years were a TV show he skipped. I didn't know how to carry it anymore. The weight of what he forgot and the memory I had to live with every day. I stood and pressed my forehead against the kitchen window. The early morning sun made the dew on his lawn shimmer like a field of stars. His car was still in the driveway. Probably still asleep. I thought about knocking on his door that morning. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat back down and did something I hadn't done since Claire left for grad school in Tallahassee. I wrote another letter. Dear Jack, you don't recognize me. I understand that now. But once, a long time ago, I was everything to you. You held my hand when my mother died. You carried my books across campus even when I told you not to. You kissed me the night Nixon announced he was running again, and we swore we'd never live long enough to see another war. You told me we'd go to Paris someday. You said you'd write me from New York. You didn't. You said I got silence. And then I got pregnant. I mailed you a letter. You never wrote back. Maybe you never got it. Maybe you did and just decided your life would be easier without me in it. Either way, I raised our daughter alone. Her name is Claire. She's 51 now. She's brilliant, sarcastic, and has your eyes. You lived a whole life while pretending I never existed. But I've spent my entire life knowing you once did. Nora. I folded it neatly and slid it into a fresh envelope. And then I burned it. Not in anger, just to make sure I didn't chicken out and send it later. Because it wasn't for him. Not really. It was for me. A goodbye that should have happened decades ago. I sat outside on the lanai with my tea watching the sun climb. By 7, Jack's garage door rumbled open. He stepped out in khaki shorts and a Jimmy Buffett t-shirt carrying a toolbox. He looked happy. He was fixing a bird feeder. He whistled while he worked. I wondered if he ever whistled like that in 1971. If he whistled the morning he left. I watched him for a long time. Then I closed my eyes and just like that I was back there. Denver, July 1971. I was standing barefoot in the apartment we shared, the cheap linoleum cool against my toes. The air smelled like his cologne and the burnt toast I'd left in the oven. He was gone. His suitcase was gone. His guitar. His books. No note. Just silence. I sat on the floor clutching my stomach, already starting to show, and I told myself I'd be okay. I didn't need him. But I cried anyway. I called his dorm. No answer. I mailed the letter to his internship office in New York, praying someone would forward it. And then I stopped praying. Claire was born in February. 9 pounds 6 ounces and furious from the second she took her first breath. She never asked about her father growing up. I think she saw the answer in my face. When she turned 16, she found the letter in the laundry room cabinet. She didn't say a word. She just sat on the kitchen floor and cried. We didn't talk about it again for years. Now back in the present, I heard footsteps on gravel. Jack was walking toward my fence. Morning again, he called. I took a breath and looked up. He smiled. You're an early riser, huh? I smiled weakly. Habit. Listen, he said, scratching the back of his neck. I hope I didn't come off too forward the other day with the dinner thing. I just figured it'd be nice to share a meal. I stood slowly and met him at the edge of the lawn. I need to tell you something, I said. He tilted his head. Okay. But before I could speak, he added, you seem familiar. Did we ever meet before? I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. I think we did, I said. His eyes searched mine. College. Denver. 1970. He blinked. A long pause. Then he laughed softly. Nora? Wait, Nora Lawson. My heart dropped. So you do remember. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I do. God. That was a lifetime ago. He looked down, suddenly shy. I was such an idiot back then. You were, I said calmly. But I'm not here to punish you, Jack. He looked up, eyes wide. Then why are you here? Because, I said quietly, you moved next door. And the past came with you. His smile faded. Can we talk sometime? Properly. I hesitated. Then, I think we should. If you've ever carried a secret for decades, only to face the person who left you holding it, subscribe now. The next part is where the truth finally comes out. There's no preparing for the moment your daughter learns the man she's called Dad her whole life wasn't. Claire and I had always had a quiet, unspoken agreement. We didn't talk about Jack. She knew enough to feel the outline of his absence. But she never pushed. Never demanded. I thought I was protecting her. Truth is, I might have just been protecting myself. But when Jack moved next door, and started asking questions I wasn't ready to answer, I knew the time had come to rip off the band-aid I'd been clutching to for 5 decades. We agreed to talk the following evening just after supper. It was still hot even as the sun dipped low behind the palms, But I set 2 lawn chairs under the shade of my carport and brought out glasses of sweet tea. Jack shuffled over right on time, wearing those old brown sandals and a look I couldn't quite read. "You look exactly the same," he said as he sat down. I laughed, short and sharp. "You're a terrible liar." He smiled but said nothing. We sipped our tea in silence for a while. Cicadas buzzed in the distance. A sprinkler coughed to life 3 doors down. Then he cleared his throat. "I need to say something," he said, setting his glass on the ground between us. "Back then, when I left, I didn't mean to disappear like that. I got scared. Stupid, selfish. Thought I had to chase the job, the dream. I told myself I'd come back." "You never did," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know. I was 21 and thought the world revolved around my ambition. Judy, my wife, she grounded me later. But by then, I figured I'd burned too many bridges to reach back." I stared at the horizon, my fingers tightening around the plastic cup. "You didn't just burn a bridge, Jack. You left someone behind." He looked at me. "Someone?" I turned toward him, voice steady. "Her name is Claire. She's 51. She teaches high school history and still corrects my grammar like she's getting paid for it." His mouth fell open slightly. "Claire is my—" I nodded. "Your daughter." His face went pale. He didn't speak. Didn't blink. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally whispered. "I did." My voice cracked. "I wrote to you. I mailed a letter to your internship address in New York. You never responded." "I never got it," he muttered. "God nor I swear, if I had." "But you didn't." I cut him off, not unkindly. "And I raised her alone. And she turned out just fine without you." Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face like a man trying to scrub away 50 years of guilt. "Does she know?" he asked. "She knows about you. But she doesn't know you're here." "Not yet." He shook his head slowly. "Jesus. I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything," I said. "Just listen." And so I told him. About the night I found out I was pregnant, sitting alone on that rusted apartment floor, scared out of my mind. About giving birth in a state-run hospital with no one but a nurse named Eileen holding my hand. About working 2 jobs while finishing my degree. About Claire's first words, her scraped knees, her graduation speeches, her heartbreaks. "I thought about you every Christmas," I said, voice softer now. "Every birthday. Wondering if you even remembered I existed." He looked like a man unraveling. "I don't deserve to know her." "No, you don't," I said honestly. "But that decision isn't mine to make. It's hers." And right then, like fate itself had set the stage, I heard the crunch of gravel behind us. Claire's car. She'd come down to visit, bringing me groceries from Whole Foods and homemade banana bread I always pretended to like. I stood, panic clawing up my throat. Jack froze. The car door slammed. Footsteps. Then her voice, cheerful and sharp like always. "Mom? You outside?" I turned, heart thudding. "Yeah, honey, I'm here." She rounded the corner with a reusable bag slung over her shoulder. She smiled until her eyes landed on Jack. She stopped. Her expression shifted. Fully. "Hi," she said, cautious now. "Didn't know you had company." Jack, I said. My voice was brittle. Jack stood slowly. He didn't speak. Just stared at her like she was a painting he couldn't believe was real. Claire looked between us. "Jack." She said it flatly. Question, but not really. There was silence. Then she whispered, "Wait, Jack." My stomach flipped. "I didn't want you to find out like this," I said gently. Claire stared at me, then at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. She took a shaky step backward. "No," she said. "No, that can't be." "It's him," I said. Her face twisted into something I hadn't seen since she was 15. Pain. Bigger. Pure betrayal. "You told me he was dead," she said. I blinked. "No, Claire, I never said that. You said he was gone. That he left." What was I supposed to think? I stepped toward her, but she raised a hand. "Don't," she said. "You knew he was here and you didn't tell me?" "I was going to," I said. "Tonight. I swear. She turned to Jack, her voice cracking. And you what? You just show up here like it's a sitcom reunion? You abandoned us. I didn't know, Jack said, stepping forward. Claire, don't, she snapped, eyes filled with tears. Don't say my name like you've earned it. The silence that followed was unbearable. Jack stood rooted in place, his face hollow. Claire stared at me like I was a stranger. And I stood in the middle, crushed under the weight of it all. I need to go, Claire said, turning on her heel. I shouldn't have come. Claire, wait, I called after her. But she was already backing out of the driveway, tires crunching the gravel, leaving behind nothing but dust and devastation. Jack sank back into his chair like someone had knocked the wind out of him. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, I whispered. He shook his head slowly. I don't know what to do. And the worst part? Neither did I. I sat down beside him. The sun had dipped low now. Shadows stretched across the yard. I don't think she hates you, I said finally. Not forever. But she hates me now, he said quietly. I nodded. And maybe she should. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 4 p.m., an hour too late for decency and an hour too early for dinner. But in Palm Creek Village it might as well have been primetime drama. Folks came not for the minutes or the motions, but for the gossip and finger-pointing dressed up as civic duty. I hadn't planned on saying anything. Lord knows I never liked public speaking. But after what happened with Claire, the weight of 52 years pressed so hard on my chest, I couldn't breathe unless I let it out. She hadn't called since storming off that day. Not a single text. Not even the passive-aggressive memes she usually sent when she was mad. Jack had knocked once the morning after. Left banana muffins and a sticky note that just said, I'm sorry. For everything. I hadn't answered the door. The truth was I wasn't mad at just him. I was mad at time. At the universe. At myself. For carrying a secret like a broken bone I never set right. And for waiting too long to decide what healing looked like. So when I walked into the rec center that Thursday afternoon, I didn't just carry a folder of old HOA notes and a bottle of water. I carried 50 years of silence. The room was packed, 20 or so retirees sitting on metal folding chairs, fanning themselves with newsletters. The air smelled like dollar store potpourri and arthritis cream. Up front sat Edna McAllister, our HOA president for life, perched like a hawk behind her folding table with a clipboard and a gavel she used far too liberally. Jack was already there, sitting 2 rows from the back. Alone. He looked up when I entered. Our eyes met. Piqued, hopeful. Or maybe nervous. Maybe both. I didn't sit next to him. I didn't sit at all. Edna smacked the gavel. Meeting will now come to order. She droned on about fencing regulations, lawn lengths, and a stray cat someone claimed was stealing joy from the neighborhood. I barely heard a word. My pulse pounded like a drum behind my eyes. Then near the end Edna announced, "Any new business?" No one moved. And then I stood. People turned. Curious eyes. Raised brows. The murmur of fans clicking slower. I have something to say, I began, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. It's not about property lines. Or cats. Edna squinted over her glasses. Is it HOA-related, Nora? In a way, I said. It's about neighbors. And history. And the things we bury when we think no one remembers. I cleared my throat. My fingers tightened around the paper in my hand. Not a speech, just a note with one word on it. Truth. I didn't need a script. I'd lived it. 52 years ago, I began, a man I loved left without a word. I was young. And pregnant. Gasps. A few folks murmured, unsure if this was a confession or a meltdown. That man is here today, I continued, my voice strengthening. He lives next door to me now. By chance. Or maybe not. Maybe life has a twisted sense of timing. I looked straight at Jack. His face was pale. His eyes full. His name is Jack Tilley, I said evenly. The room erupted into whispers. Jack lowered his head, but he didn't run. I wrote him a letter back then, I said, telling him I was carrying his child. He never responded. I thought he ignored me. turns out he never saw the letter. I paused, letting the weight of it settle. Our daughter Claire found out who he was last week. Not in a safe, quiet space. Not with time to process. But in my driveway. Because I was too afraid to tell her sooner. My chest tightened. My knees wobbled. I've lived with this for 5 decades, I whispered. And I'm tired. Then I looked around the room. At the faces who knew me only as the garden lady, or the one who always brought lemon squares to bridge. I'm telling you this, I said, because we all carry something. Regrets. Secrets. Guilt. We keep them quiet because we think no one wants to hear them. But maybe the only way we heal is by being seen. That's when the room blurred. My chest burned. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like hornets. I staggered. Someone shouted, "Nora." Then everything went sideways. My knees buckled. The floor rushed up to meet me. Darkness. When I came to, I was lying on a stretcher in the back of an ambulance. Cool oxygen flowed through my nose. A paramedic hovered nearby. "Ma'am, you passed out," he said gently. "Your blood pressure dropped. You're going to be okay." I nodded weakly, everything spinning. Then I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in hours. "Mom." "Claire." I turned my head. She was standing just outside the ambulance, cheeks streaked with tears, her hand clenched around her phone. "I got the call," she said, voice shaking. "Mr. Tilley told the paramedics to contact your emergency contact." "That's me." Jack stood behind her, eyes red. Silent. "You scared the hell out of me," Claire said. "I'm okay," I whispered. She climbed into the ambulance and took my hand. And for a long moment we just sat there. No questions. No anger. Just breath. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "Me too," she whispered. "I shouldn't have left like that. I was just overwhelmed." "You had every right to be." She looked down. "He wants to talk. But I told him only if you were okay with it." I glanced past her. Jack was standing alone by the curb, hands clasped in front of him, waiting like a schoolboy summoned to the principal. "I think it's time," I said softly. "For all of us." Claire squeezed my hand. "Then let's talk." They discharged me 2 hours later. "Just dehydration," the doctor said. Stress didn't help. Neither did 93-degree heat and a 5-decade-long emotional avalanche. That night we sat on my back porch, me, Claire, and Jack. No speeches. No scripts. Just stories. He told her about his youth, his regrets, how much he wished he could go back. She told him about her childhood, the holes in it, the way she learned to patch them herself. And I sat there in the middle as the sun dipped below the treeline, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not anger. Not sadness. But closure. We would never be the picture-perfect family. There were too many cracks in the foundation. But we could still build something. Something honest. Something whole. And maybe, just maybe, something new. If this story moved you, if you've ever faced your past and lived to rewrite the ending, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because healing doesn't happen all at once. But it does begin here.